we are here, finally, the last month of the year. So we've only got a few pages left of our A to Z's of horror. And I also made an important announcement. So look out for that because I have put it everywhere. It's about Barkers and Briefs going forward. And then also my new project, which is Panties and Pulp. I like alliterations. Shock. So today is V for vice versa. Good old traditional. Forgot to take off my sleeve. V for vice versa. Oh. One of the things we are most afraid of is spawning a monster. But for some of us, monsters are welcome opportunities to be different, to act in anti-normal ways, hideous and beautiful at the same time. Everything is in flux, everything changes, the body changes, the soul changes. We are capable of extraordinary change, internal self-transformation, which is manifested very often in my stories as physical shape-shifting. The fiction of the fantastic brims with metaphors for this condition, tales of people whose cells are protean and souls migrant, people called by mysterious forces to a place they visited in other lives or states, a place never understood, at least until the moment of crisis, as their real home. If you'll forgive me, I thought I might say a little about some of my own work and its sequels, a small indulgence perhaps. In my early works, The Books of Blood, 1984 to 85, I tried to address a number of issues, and there were some that kept cropping up again and again. The issues of transformation, paradox, and gender ambiguity. Sex and transformation can go nicely together. The reconfiguring of the virginal woman into lustful vampire contains more than just the seeds of eroticism. The looks of a beautiful woman don't keep forever in spite of makeup and plastic surgery. In our culture, becoming old is synonymous with being monstrous. But why should becoming monstrous be any less fun? Is the life of the vampire so bad? A life that offers new worlds, new pleasures, new experiences, and above all, immortality. In the sequel to my film, Hellraiser, 1987, screenwriter Peter Atkins has our protagonist, Julia, come back from hell, immortal, erotic, and filled with new power. The woman with everything except her skin. So the asides. To be able to fly, to be smoke or a wolf, to know the night and live in it forever, that's not so bad. You call us monsters, but when you dream, it's of flying and changing and living without death. Rachel and Nightbreed. Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, UK, USA, 1988, director Tony Randall, with Claire Higgins, Ashley Lawrence, Kenneth Branagh, Imogen Borman, Sean Chapman, Doug Bradley, New World Pictures, Cinemark, Film Futures, Color. Uneven sequel to Clive Barker's box office hit Hellraiser, 1987, helped by some impressive special effects, including some striking matte paintings of an Escher-like hell. Most of the cast from the first film return, and the story picks up a couple of hours after the end of the original. Following her encounters with the demonic Cenobites, Kirsty Cotton, Lawrence, is a patient in the Channard Institute, a hospital for the mentally disturbed. But Dr. Channard, Cranham, is prepared to go to any lengths to unlock the secrets of the outer darkness. He succeeds in releasing the flayed remains of Julia Cotton Higgins, Kirsty's hammer-wielding stepmother, and together they travel to hell to confront the awesome powers of its omnipotent master, Leviathan. Higgins is as coldly menacing as ever, and Cranham is a welcome addition as the Mad Doctor, who gets even more than he expected. Director Randall ensures that it all looks good, but post-production tinkering only confuses Peter Atkins' carefully constructed script, based on a story by Barker, S.J. Sequels, Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth, director Anthony Hitchcock, 1982, Hellraiser Bloodline, director Alan Smithy, Kevin Yager, and Joe Chappelle, 1996. And we got Peter Pinhead. And of course, this is quite out to date because we are at number 10 for the Hellraiser movies. Whew, they get so Hellraiser is about a hedonist achieving what he desired and finding out that it isn't what he wanted, explains Atkins. And the sequel is about a voyeur who is also disappointed when he achieves what he thinks he wants. Julia undergoes both a physical transformation and, if you like, a spiritual transformation. The most striking thing, obviously, is that she spends the first portion of the movie in which she appears without her skin. But what is also happening in terms of her character is that she's very much embracing her altered state, not as somebody who had been merely a victim of his stuff, but as somebody who has, in a very real way, been fulfilled by it. In Barker's Tales, the easy mutability of the human form opens up the possibility of rebirth, says critic Michael A. Morrison, at least for those willing to face this myriad travels, mysteries, and monsters. The final state of Barker's transformed is often one of those certain identity but uncertain form. In story after story, Barker transfigures, resexes, de-evolves, or reintegrates the corporeal form into bizarre post-human configurations that are often barely recognizable as once having been a man or woman. Character after character willingly, sometimes jubilantly, sheds the familiar contours of the human for the shapes of nightmare and so gains entry to new life and perhaps to new community. An aside. It's the blood they remember, the blood and the way I narrowed my eyes just before bashing someone's head in with a hammer. Claire Higgins. Much of the sex in horror fiction is deeply involved in power tripping. It's sex based upon relationships where one partner is largely under the control of the other, sex that almost inevitably leads to some bad end. Stephen King. Let's see. The films of Clive Barker, and then there's a list from Salome and Forbidden, which are his first two short films, up to Hellraiser Bloodline, 1995. And we've got a picture of Claire Higgins on one side, and then Barker and Cronenberg in Nightly. To men, women can be both the object of fear and desire. Their beauty, their sexuality attracts, but their power over us when we are at our most vulnerable can create fear. It's a paradox, and I love paradox. Most horror fiction presents deviation from the human form as frightening and aberrant. But what if a character does not deviate from the human form, but merely flips it, say from man to a woman? Sexual transformation is both the stuff of our fantasies and of terror. In my short story, The Madonna, 1985, I wanted to look at sexual paradox and transformation. The Madonna is a story of another species of women, high priestesses to an ancient goddess of fecundity. These women have made their home in an urban environment, a disused public swimming pool. From here, they seduce men, entice them for sex, which is performed ritually before their goddess. The Madonna, in turn, gives birth to her strange, gluttonous body to monstrous children, whom the priestesses feed with blood-stained breasts. The men, the ex-lovers, leave with little memory of the event, a memory that is reawakened later, however, when they find themselves turning into women. There are two characters to whom this transformation happens. One invites the paradox and is prepared to follow it into new realms, new worlds of experience. The other, Garvey, is a man who has always loved women but cannot face the notion of being one. It's an assault on more than his manliness. It's an assault on his very being. The aside here is Clive's original wish was that Julia from Hellraiser would be the monster. She'd be the Freddy Krueger of the Hellraiser series. And Pinhead and the Cenobites would sort of be background monsters. What happened, of course, was the public got in the way. They fell in love with Pinhead, Peter Atkins. And then we've got a picture here of Julia. And there's also a painting for Books of Blood, Volume 5. The asides here. The Madonna was giving birth. The swollen flesh was opening, liquid light gushing. The smell of smoke and blood filled the shower room. A girl gave a cry as in sympathy with the Madonna. The applause mounted, and suddenly the slit spasmed and delivered the child, something between a squid and a shorn lamb, onto the tiles. The water from the pipe slapped it into consciousness immediately, and it threw back its head to look about it, its single eye vast and perfectly lucid. It squirmed on the tiles for a few moments before the girl at Jerry's side stepped forward into the veil of water and picked it up. Its toothless mouth sought out her breast immediately. The girl delivered it to her tit. From the Madonna by Clive Barker. Sexuality is all too often the territory of the sentimentalist or the pornographer, too seldom that of the visionary. Yet it's a transforming act, literally. It remakes our bodies for a time and our minds too. For a little space, we know obsession intimately. We are at the call of chemical instructions which sharpen our senses while at the same time narrowing our focus, so our perceptions are heightened and refined. Clive Barker. Once upon a time, the bad place was seen by critics as symbolic of the womb, a primarily sexual symbol which perhaps allowed the Gothic to become a safe way of talking about sexual fears. Stephen King. And then we've got some pictures of Boone from Nightbreed, and then the creatures from Underworld, Mutants of Underworld. I will circle back to Underworld when we're done reading this passage, because that one is a little known Clive Barker adaptation. What now does he do? How does he deal with the transformation? Now there's the metaphor, there's the problem, but he does have a solution. So those metaphors are about sexuality, they're about old age, they're about loneliness, they are about disease. They are about all the things that have always haunted horror stories. According to Michael Morrison, many of my characters must at one time or another confront the monstrous, either in themselves or in someone they know well. Those who survive respond with curiosity, fascination, sometimes even joy, and always with a willingness to look horror in the face, to see, to know, even the most terrible of marvels, and through knowing to become. For some, the transformative journey resolves the chronic uncertainty of their precarious identity, often by simply allowing the monstrous buried true self to emerge. The journey to a new kind of life with death or reconfiguration of a body is a common rite of passage, ends in a post-human states that are clearly preferable to the desolate banality of 20th century middle-class society, at least as rendered by Clive Barker. For his protagonists, as for few in contemporary horror, the status quo of the society is neither reestablished nor reaffirmed. Freed from constraints, connections, and commitments, they flee into worlds of monsters, miracles, and revelations. And our final aside. Let's put subtext aside for a moment and consider the creature that could waltz at the center of any horror movie, the monster, the leader of Halcydian order of Cenobites, old Pinhead himself. But where I am regularly asked, does this nightmare come from? Well, I've already made mention of the sadomasochistic elements, which reflect my own long-standing interest in such taboo areas. Associated with that milieu is the punkish influence, which makes Pinhead the patron saint of piercing. But there's also a streak of priestly deportment and high-flown rhetoric in him that suggests this is a monster who knows his Milton as well as he knows his de Sade and can probably recite the Mass in Latin, albeit backwards. Clive Barker. And then our final picture is Candyman, Farewell to the Flesh. And that was V for vice versa. So really fast for Underworld, November 29th is actually its birthday. So that's kind of cool because that was like just a few days ago. I want to say it's on US Amazon Prime as Underworld, but it was originally released as Transmutations. This is our crappy Vestron video VHS copy that doesn't play very well. It's a really strange movie. But cool thing is, just because this movie was so terrible and Clive hated it so much, that's how we got Hellraiser. So, well, after Rawhead Rex, and it was a whole ordeal. So I recommend checking it out though, just because I'm a completist. Like I said, sorry that everything's kind of a mess. And I did also read the Madonna, so I will throw the Madonna in there if you haven't read it yet, because it's a pretty cool story. It's a beautiful story. In my head, it's really, really pretty, but also I'm a girl and I guess I'm biased. I don't know. You can always tell me what you think. So thank you for reading with me. And we will be moving along next week to W for Window. And it's got this picture of Poe. So I guess we're going to get super gothy with it. Thanks for reading with me. Bye.